There is a world beyond ours, a world that is both far away, nearby, and invisible. Those are the words of Maria Sabina, a Mexican healer and shaman. She was referring to her work with psilocybin mushrooms in healing ceremonies with her people. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stuart James, and you're listening to the Common Anomaly podcast. I'm flying solo. Clayton is away on vacation, so I thought, I'm going to give this a shot and try doing a solo episode for once. It's been quite a while. I've been wanting to practice. And yeah, this is a subject I'm super interested in. Clayton seems less so. I broached it a couple times, and he's always kind of shied away from it for whatever reason. Maybe he's just not that interested. So I thought, what the hell, he's away, and why not dive into this and explore it a little bit? Yeah, because I think you'll find it interesting. I don't have too much of a history or of experience with hallucinogenics myself, maybe a little psilocybin back in the day, but it's been a very long time, but nothing quite as intense as acid or DMT or anything like that. But I find the experiences people have are extremely interesting, especially those on DMT, which if you don't know what DMT is, it is dimethyltryptamine, and it is a naturally occurring substance in the human brain and many animals and plants. It is associated with near-death experience and transcendental states, and can cause incredibly vivid auditory and visual hallucinations. And a lot of people report seeing entities having interactions while on such a substance or having experience. And many people report very kind of similar entities. There are a lot of themes that pop up. So one theory is that these are less hallucinations and more gateways. People are opening up into other realities or other levels of our own existence, higher planes, if you will, stuff like that. And so I've always found that idea really interesting, and I'd love to explore it with you guys today. Obviously, I do not condone or encourage anyone to take such substances. People can do what you want, but this is not medical advice, all right? I do have a great book here that I've been dying to get into. It's the Illustrated Field Guide to DMT Entities, Machine Elves, Tricksters, Teachers, and Other Interdimensional Beings. And so I've had this a little while. Like I said, I've been trying to get into this topic, but Clayton just hasn't been all that interested. I actually saw someone, a friend of mine on Facebook rather, posted about it, and I went and picked it up. Really great book, and it kind of acts as a field guide, as it says in the title. Who's the author here? David J. Brown and Sarah Finn Huntley. And it's got tons of illustrations, artist renderings of the different beings and creatures that people have described meeting with. It's really fascinating work. Really great book. Great reference library piece for our paranormal library here. And full of great illustrations and fun stories. So yeah, we're going to get into it. I'd like to start with just a passage from the introduction of the book right here. The author writes, "The Illustrated Field Guide to the DMT Entities is a primitive, playful attempt to begin an extraterrestrial or interdimensional zoology or taxonomy, to classify intelligent species and highly evolved creatures from other worlds in the form of a naturalistic field guide." So again, just kind of reiterating the concept that they're really looking to try and build some kind of reference piece that can serve as a guide for people who maybe want to explore these kinds of experiences or maybe have been on them before, and just learn about the themes. Like I said, many people have these experiences, encounter very similar looking entities. So what they're trying to do is build like an encyclopedia, basically. Yeah, that's the best way I can put it. An encyclopedia of these creatures that are maybe in a world neighboring ours, or that actually overlaps with ours, but we just can't see unless we're in these altered states. It is important to note that not everybody feels that these beings, these creatures are independent, and there's always the possibility that they're just hallucinations. So later the introduction goes on to talk about an author, James Kent, and he's the author of a book called Psychedelic Information Theory. And in this book, I guess, there's an essay, The Case Against DMT Elves, and in that Kent wrote, The times that I did see elves, I tried very hard to press them into giving up some non-transient feature that would confirm, at least in a rudimentary, autonomous existence beyond my own imagination. Of course I could not. Whenever I tried to pull any information out of the entities regarding themselves, the data that was given up was always relevant only to me. The elves could not give me any piece of data I did not already know, nor could their existence be sustained under any kind of prolonged scrutiny. Like a dream, once you realize you are dreaming, you are actually slipping into wakefulness and the dream fades. When you try to shine a light of reason on them, they dissolve like shadows. Now, I just want to say for a moment, I found that passage particularly interesting because of my own experiences, not on DMT, at least having taken it artificially, but with dream experiences, and particularly lucid dream experiences that I've had. I mentioned a long time ago that I did, at one time in my life, a number of years ago, develop a practice of lucid dreaming, and I had a whole ritual I do every night to try and induce it, and I was finding a degree of success for a little while. And one of the things that I had heard was something you could try once you achieved lucidness, awareness in the dream state, was to start confronting characters in your dreams and questioning them and asking them questions and seeing how they respond. And what I guess a lot of people find is that they don't usually respond positively to being challenged or addressed in such a way. It's almost like they don't like that you've figured out that they're not necessarily there or real or might be an aspect of your subconscious. I remember one time I actually ran into Clayton in a dream when I was lucid dreaming and confronted him and said, I know you're not real. I know you're just an aspect of my subconscious. What are you supposed to represent, And yeah, he got very upset. He didn't say anything. He just kind of stormed away, which is not totally unlike Clayton, I guess. But astral lucid dream Clayton did not want to be questioned. So it's interesting to me, and I'm not sure how to interpret that result. That could be a reflection of the fact that that character or that thing is not an aware thinking being or creature, but is just a reflection of your subconscious and some aspect of yourself. Or it could be that you're breaking the rules. You're in a different mind state, or you're supposed to be, and challenging the existence that you're experiencing is not playing by the rules. And maybe that just annoys these entities. I don't know. Let's move on. So the book goes on to discuss some scientific studies on DMT and DMT contact. The authors describe the first scientific study to report on the DMT entity phenomenon began in 1990, when a portal into new dimensions of the mind and reality opened up at the University of New Mexico after the FDA and DEA granted approval for psychiatric researcher Rick Strassman to study the extraordinary psychoactive effects of DMT in healthy human volunteers, as Strassman describes in his book DMT, The Spirit Molecule. The author then goes on to describe just some more studies that have been done over the years. A survey of more than 2,500 DMT users conducted at Johns Hopkins University. 96% of the respondents reported that they believed that the interactions they had, were with conscious, intelligent entities. 78% reported that they were benevolent. 70% saw them as sacred. And 54% experienced it as having agency in the world. So some really interesting results there. And I just wanted to recount this one story. This is pretty good, from one of Rick Strassman's volunteers, a volunteer named Sarah. So here goes. Sarah reported after one of her high-dose trips, I went directly into deep space. They knew I was coming back, and they were ready for me. They told me there were many things they could share with us when we learn how to make more extended contact. To study these mysterious beings further, Andrew Gilmore and Rick Strassman have collaborated to develop a pharmacokinetic. Anyway, model of DMT as the basis of a target-controlled intravenous infusion protocol for extended journeys into DMT space. They and others have begun working with technology that allow people to stay in the high-dose DMT state, which normally peaks for only a few minutes. For extended periods of time, such as hours or even longer, since DMT isn't known to create any tolerance in the brain, theoretically this will allow people to have lengthier periods of contact with beings that may reside in this realm and make real progress with communication. So that's fascinating, them developing this protocol. They're calling it DMTX, this protocol, by the way. So yeah, it's really interesting because DMT trips, when induced with the drug artificially, are extremely short, a handful of minutes. And a lot of things subjects have been reporting is that when they encounter these entities very often will have something of very vital importance they're trying to communicate to the subject, which never seems to come across. It all comes through as gobbledygook, or the subject just can't make sense of what's being communicated. And then the experience is over. They're ripped out of it so quickly before you can even try to establish a meaningful dialogue with any of these creatures. So really interesting that they've developed this technique. Kind of curious to see where that leads and what kind of results they get. It does make me think, that does sound very much like the nature of a dream. Very often when I'm in dreams, whenever there's a piece of information, say, written on a screen, it's like you can never read it. All the characters kind of keep shifting. Or I don't know if you've ever been in a dream and tried to dial a telephone, and it's like you could never get the number right because just the numbers interchange and your finger just always seems to miss and you can never dial the number you're trying to dial. And just that aspect of reality just never seems to work in that realm. And that does make me wonder if that's an aspect of the condition of how that drug acts or how that state of mind functions, that things just can't compute in the same way, or if there's some kind of divide there that can be crossed with more extended use or extended interaction. I do want to just take a quick little aside to acknowledge some of the artwork in the book. There's some really beautiful pieces in there. Some of it is AI, and some of it is actual human created from scratch artwork. And some of them are pretty interesting and quite beautiful. And I'm looking at one, the DMT realm map. And it is a Midjourney creation, but it's really quite striking and beautiful. It's very colorful. Got all these fractal patterns expanding, kind of creating the impression that you're looking at a landscape. Yeah, just kudos to the book for that. And maybe you're not someone who's into drugs. It's something you would never do, but maybe a book like this that's got a lot of illustrations and a lot of artwork to express kind of the experiences, you can kind of get a little window into what those experiences are like for people if you don't want to directly have one yourself. So I think that's kind of cool aspect to the book. All right. Next, I'd like to read out a passage from another experiencer who had documented their experience on DMT during one of these studies. I believe this is the account of a Mr. D.M. Turner, self-opposed psychonaut and author. And Mr. Turner writes, "I loaded my pipe and smoked 30 milligrams in 3 tokes. I entered DMT space and was greeted with the usual pantheon of critters and objects. These elves and other creatures didn't seem to be doing anything of particular interest or meaning, and looking past them I saw some doors from behind which came occasional flashes of bright-colored light. A friend of mine had recently remarked that he thought the DMT elves were primarily there to distract one from entering the deeper aspects of the DMT experiences, and that he'd been successful in moving beyond them by willing the elves to let him pass. This was in my mind, as I said to the elves, 'Let me through. Let me through.' I had to repeat this several times with lots of force, even saying it out loud. Eventually the elves reluctantly let me through, and as I passed through a doorway, I was admitted to a vast dimensional space. At this point, I seemed to be flying. I was disembodied consciousness. I scanned this new space to hone in on any being or creature that might be present. Soon I came across some angel guardian-type beings. I recall there were about 7 of them. They looked like blobs of light, somewhat gray in color and sort of egg-shaped. They appeared solid from a distance, but on closer examination I saw that their bodies were made of closely packed fibers. These were connected at the center, but apparently could open at any point on the outside of their bodies. They seemed to be part computer, part robot, part flesh and brain matter, but all of these elements were blended into one living whole. When I came into their territory, these beings briefly glanced over at me, as if to say, "What's all this commotion about?" Then they went back to their tasks, seemingly ignoring me. They seemed that they were busy watching over everything that happens in our space-time dimension, and occasionally making minor adjustments to keep everything in line. Okay, I really loved that description. There's more to that story, but I want to leave it at there for now. And I want to talk about the machine elves. They're something that pop up a lot. That's probably the number one creature or entity people encounter. And it does seems like that's level one kind of experience. They've got different descriptions, but everybody describes them in sort of a similar way, where they're kind of biomechanical blobs or orbs that might shift into multicolored entities and kind of hop around. One person described them kind of as basketballs at one point, with changing colors and creating these kaleidoscopic different toys that they would just sing into existence and would pass around. But we'll talk more about the machine elves a little later. But I really liked the description of these angel guardian creatures. I wonder, I would love to ask this experiencer why they thought they were angel guardians and not something perhaps more malicious in nature. Maybe that's just a feeling they had. I don't know, but I thought that was a really incredible description of these weird egg-like blobs that are responsible for looking after all of reality, and kind of their entire purpose is to make little tweaks to make sure basically our entire universe is unfolding in the way it should. So it makes me wonder, when he kind of storms into the room and they all turn and look at him, are like, who the hell is this guy? What did they miss? What did they miss? What important aspect of our reality were they not paying attention to when this idiot stumbled into the room? So who knows? But I thought that was really funny. Really interesting. So at this point, I think we just like to take a little break. I say we, it's just me here. But yeah, I'll take a little music break here, and then we'll come back on the other side, actually dig into the meat of some of these entities and get into the catalog a little bit. All right, I'll see you on the other side. Hey everybody, welcome back. I'd just like to take a quick second to say, if you're still hanging with us here, do us a favor, just hit that like button and subscribe. It costs nothing, and it lets you know when our next episodes come out, and it really helps the algorithm kind of push the show out farther to new audience, and we really depend on that kind of grassroots exposure to help grow the show. So it costs nothing at all, just click a button, and yeah, it really helps the show out. And if you don't happen to be on YouTube, you're on one of the other podcast networks, there's usually some option or way to review the show, give it 5 stars, or even just leave a comment. That stuff really helps get the show out. So do us a favor, hit that like button. Thanks very much. Now let's get back to the content. So there's just one more point I want to cover on this whole DMT-X thing. I find that idea very intriguing, and there's a section later on in this same chapter talking about a group in Colorado. I believe it's Daniel McQueen is the one speaking in this quote here, and they say, "We made contact with the same entities each time. They said that they were made out of the fabric of existence. We had extended conversations, and it was like something out of a sci-fi movie. They taught us how to use the DMT-X technology even better on the next expedition, so we can have more efficient and even more productive conversations. The goal is to bring back world-transforming technology. Are they real? Define real. But we treated it as such just in case. Ceremony, prayer, and diplomacy are all part of our protocol. Not to mention the medical and safety requirements. I personally consider it an interdimensional collaboration." Okay, so this is getting really fascinating now. So they've actually established contact with these entities, and there is a meaningful exchange of information, enough to the point where the entities on the other side of this exchange are teaching them how to use their protocol and their technology better and making improvements so that they can stay in the DMT state longer and have more collaboration. So there's actually, it seems like their process is working because they're actually achieving their goal. They're having more meaningful and productive conversations with the entities on the other side. That also makes me think, well, there's got to be something to it, because where is that information coming from? But it also is a little scary because we don't really understand the true nature of these entities on the other side of this exchange, if they really exist at all. I mean, they say they're from higher dimensional planes. That's the impression they get when they visit these realms. But how do they know they're not lower realms? How do they know they're not being deceived? So, and that's always the trouble with these things, is you don't really know what you're interacting with. And there's no real way to verify it, because you don't even know if it's real in the first place. So really interesting stuff, but also makes me raise an eyebrow a little bit, like, what's really going on here? Okay, so I just want to read out one more experience for you guys before we actually get into the catalog. I know I'm belaying that, but I came across this one, and I just thought it was a lot of fun. So we'll just do one more experiencer account before we jump into the actual catalog. Let's talk about higher dimensional beings. The first time I experienced these beings, I was on 45 milligrams of DMT, NN-DMT, pure freebase. I took all in one dose. Instantly, I'm hearing the frequencies. Whoosh! I'm beamed out of my body, and I'm on a ship. And on the ship, there's 3 beings wearing skin-tight white jumpsuits. What I felt was they were Palladian beings, and they told me that they just wanted to run some simple tests. So I agreed. She said, "We're going to lay you on this table here." She then proceeded to lean over my face with her face. On her eyes, she had microscoping cameras. As they scan me and get closer to my eyes, I can feel light. They then sat me up and looked over at the other woman. She's holding up square flashcards. On these flashcards, each has a symbol on them, and the main symbol, seared into my mind from this experience, was the infinity sign. As I looked into the infinity sign, I instantly felt a download of information come into me, showing me that we are infinite beings of light. It completely transformed my entire life. We are all one. We are all the same. There is no separation. It's all an illusion. I am you, you are me, we are we, and we are all together here. So that's funny. I think John Lennon might have been the source of that last line there. But what an experience, hey? Just like full bore, deep end, whoosh, you're on a spaceship and instantly getting examined. Really fun story. Really fun story. So, and yeah, I don't know what you guys think about this, but were they Palladians? Were they something else? The whole infinity symbol inducing this mystical state where she's just feeling love and light and all that. I'm never sure what to think about those things. See, you could be being manipulated. Like, how do you know? How do you know you haven't been covertly injected with something just to feel that way so they could do even more experiments on you? I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little cynical here, but that's just where my mind goes. Okay, so finally, enough delays. Let's actually get into some of what are these entities, right? Let's get into the catalog of entities a little bit. I've kept you guys waiting long enough. So the first, I'm not going to cover all of them, by the way. I think the full catalog is 25 or 26 different types of entities. And I'm just going to highlight a couple that I think are interesting and that I have some discussion points around. So let's talk about the machine elves, because they are, again, the most common and usually the first type of entity that people encounter. And so I just want to read this excerpt from the beginning of that chapter. Perhaps the most well-known of all DMT entities are the self-transforming machine elves, also sometimes referred to as tykes, clockwork elves, or self-transforming elf machines. The late ethnobotanist Terence McKenna originally coined the term self-transforming machine elves to describe the mischievous entities he regularly encountered on his breakthrough DMT voyages, who competed with one another to present him with magical Fabergé egg-like super toys. McKenna described the machine elves as looking like jeweled, self-dribbling basketballs, and others have said that they look like fairy tale elves from children's books, with ever-shifting biomechanical bodies. Many DMT users consider them to be an advanced species that permanently inhabits the realms of hyperspace. So that's really fascinating. I find this idea of the machine elves really interesting. Like they're almost like little worker bee caretaker entities that are, they're responsible for all the menial tasks and all the maintenance of this realm, it seems, in some form. But they seem like they're really playful, energetic entities. And it always makes me think of the Mechanicals from A Midsummer's Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. I have some background in Shakespeare, and I've done a couple of productions. And yeah, I always think of the Mechanicals. The Mechanicals were a troupe of actors that produce a play within the play of A Midsummer Night's Dream. And they come and they're really this goofy cast of characters of different professions, and they come and they're very comical, and they kind of get seduced by these fairy creatures because they go into the woods to rehearse their play. And then, yeah, they encounter these mystical fairy entities that then bewitch them and put spells on them and cause all kinds of mayhem. And it always makes me think of that whenever I hear about these DMT elves, these mechanical worker bees. The next type of entity I'd like to explore is clowns, jesters, tricksters, harlequins, and imps. So yeah, the harlequin, really interesting. There's just something about clowns, isn't there? A lot of people have an innate fear of clowns for some reason. I forget the name of the psychosis, but it's definitely a thing. And for some reason, harlequins or clowns come up in the DMT realm. I want to read this page just because it's got some really great insights. So the author writes, the late ethnobotanist Terence McKenna once said that the archetype of DMT is the circus, and to this day a considerable number of people note that they see clowns, jesters, or similar trickster beings in their trip reports. In Rick Strassman's original DMT study, a number of subjects reported encountering clowns, jesters, jokers, and imps. For example, one subject in Strassman's study reported, I started flying through an intense circus-like environment. I've never been that out of body before. We went through a maze at an incredibly fast pace. I say we because it seemed like I was accompanied. There was this crazy circus sideshow. It was extravagant. It's hard to describe. They looked like jokers. They were almost performing for me. They were funny looking, bells on their hats, big noses. However, I had a feeling that they could turn on me, that they were a little less than completely friendly. While some writers try to explain these encounters by describing them as archetypal, meaning in the Jungian sense that they are manifestations of the collective unconscious, the strange mystery of why they occur in such frequency still remains. However, explaining the archetypal meaning of clowns and jesters might give us a clue into what these mysterious beings are trying to communicate. It may be that the way we see entities in hyperspace depends on how they wish to present themselves to us, rather than their physical morphology. If this is the case, then the visual forms these entities present in hyperspace may be more like avatars we wear in virtual reality than their true physical form. Really intriguing stuff. The Harlequin, yeah. Something about clowns. I'm not quite sure what to say about this. I don't know what to make of the whole idea of this presentational aspect of this circus going on. Like it's all about you as the experiencer. If I was entering another realm, you would think that they would have their own business. that they had to attend to, and you would be an interloper out of nowhere causing a disruption, and it wouldn't be about entertaining you or occupying you. So I find that really odd. I'm not sure what to do with that. But yeah, it does kind of make you think that this isn't their true form. This is an elaborate performance for my benefit. They're presenting to me what they want me to see for some reason. And maybe it's to distract you from what is really going on in the realm, what the true nature of these beings are. I'm not sure, but I agree with the experiencer's hesitation that you felt like, I'm not sure I can really trust this thing. It's putting on a really happy face, and it's this really energetic, positive performance it's displaying to me, but I'm not sure I can trust it. Yeah, really interesting. There's all kinds of others in here. There's definitely religious ones, JC, others like that. Demons, of course. So there is negative entities you can encounter. But let's take a pick at something else here. Let's see what else we got. So something that's really fascinating is that there are several chapters here on different classifications of what we'd normally think of extraterrestrial entities or aliens. They've got lizard or reptilian type creatures. They've got insectoid or mantis-like creatures, and they've got actually alien greys. So this is a really interesting question. Why do the entities that people encounter on DMT or in DMT states so closely resemble aliens that we see in the abduction phenomenon and related to the UFO phenomenon? Are these two things connected? Are intrusions from UFOs that we see in the sky, what if they aren't coming from some other solar system or some other galaxy? What if they're intruding into our reality from the DMT space and they're actually interdimensionally traveling to us the same way we take the drug to get to them? I don't know. I find that really fascinating. And it delves into some kind of ancient astronaut stuff. It points out cave paintings, from ancient people on cave walls kind of depicting gray aliens with bulging eyes and no lips. And yeah, that's an interesting avenue to go on. Are they interdimensional opposed to physical beings that occupy our same universe? And maybe that's why they come here, is because maybe we've had contact with these entities going back throughout our entire history as a species. And maybe they found a way technologically to break through from their realm to our realm. Really interesting to think about. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Actually, I kind of really want to dive into this idea of encountering devils or demons in DMT experiences. So that really fascinates me. Everything else we've heard so far has all been these playful, sprite-like entities or spiritual leaders, angels, entities that control the nature of our existence, that sort of thing, spirit guides and the like. But yeah, there's always a dark underbelly to anything, right? So let's just peer into the dark side a little bit. I want to read a portion of this page, and the author writes, "Terrifying encounters with the devil or demons from various religious systems are not uncommon during profound psychedelic experiences, especially among people who adhere to one of the Christian faiths, and they can be extremely frightening. The devil is described as the supreme spirit of evil in the Christian faith and the ruler of hell, the netherworld, or eternal punishment, misery, and torment. Demons are often described as evil spirits, and they appear throughout Eastern and Western religious systems, as well as within shamanic frameworks. Ayahuasca cultures warn of dark and parasitic spirits and the nefarious intents of evil entities encountered during ayahuasca sessions. People who encounter demons during psychedelic experiences often describe them as horrifying, ugly entities who overpower and possess them, torment them mercilessly, and often encourage them with dark advice, such as with thoughts of violence, self-mutilation, or suicide. Sometimes they appear within psychedelic visions. For example, one person told me that while on DMT, he once saw demons eating Jesus Christ on the cross. However, on breakthrough doses of DMT, the demons can become full-blown personal encounters." So it seems to me that there's always an aspect of good and evil in everything, no matter what it is, whether it's our own lives, whether it's in religious worship, whether it's in exploring these other dimensional higher plane spirit realms, whether it's the UFO phenomenon, whatever it is, there always seems to be this eternal struggle between good and evil. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. I mean, some people will turn around and say the UFO phenomenon, it's all demonic, it's all demons. They're just coming from some hell dimension and invading Earth or something like that. I'm not sure what I think about that. I don't think anything's all demonic, but I think that's just an underlying truth of the universe, of our reality, is that there's always this eternal struggle, this eternal balance between good and evil. And yeah, it just makes sense they would be reflected in any kind of experience. So yeah, but I guess that bears some words of caution if you're someone who wants to dabble in things like that, especially if you're just doing it recreationally. There's no guarantee that you're going to have a good time, right? You might find yourself locked in a hell dimension, being tormented by demons, who knows? So just be cautious, be aware. And maybe even it's a matter of it reflecting back at you, like when Clayton and I on earlier episodes talked about AI and stuff and people's interaction with chatbots that turned very dark and very negative. What we found is it usually turned out to be the result of the AI just acting as a mirror and reflecting aspects of the user's personality back at them, basically just feeding them their own impulses and desires back at them. And then it turns into a loop, and that can become very destructive. So yeah, be careful. Be careful when you're dabbling with this sort of thing. So that is the book, The Illustrated Field Guide to DMT Entities, Machine Elves, Tricksters, Teachers, and Other Interdimensional Beings. So I'll drop a link to the book, the Amazon link in the show notes if you want to go pick it up. I highly recommend. Really fun book, a great piece to have. I'm really glad to have it in my library. So yeah, go pick it up if you're interested. Really fun, really fun. It did lead me to want to kind of think about philosophically what all this means, and I tried to dig up some other research, DMT and how it relates to dream states and near-death experiences, because I was realizing I just don't know a ton about that. I've heard those connections made before, but I don't know what the sources are or what underlies that. So I did a bit of digging, and I actually found there isn't actually a ton of resources on it. So it is believed that DMT is produced in the human brain in the pineal gland, and often you'll have heard references to the pineal gland as the third eye, and there's a whole connection to the Eye of Ra being the symbol. If you picture the Egyptian symbol of the Eye of Ra, it very much resembles the anatomical form of the third eye or the pineal gland, which is connected to spirit and spiritual experiences. So that's why there's that connection. And there is some scientific documentation of DMT being produced in the brains of rats. And so that's where we get this idea that basically all mammals have a similar type of organ to the pineal gland in the brain that produces DMT. But this idea that at the moment of death, your brain is flooded with DMT, and that's what creates the near-death experience, I really couldn't find any actual direct evidence that that's the case. What I found is that's basically speculation. If I'm wrong, please correct me. Send me an email to the show email or leave a comment on this video or whatever. If there's other evidence out there I haven't found, please send it to me, because I'm actually super curious about this, and I was super curious how it related to the dream state. So I think those connections are there. It feels logical just because of the types of experiences. But philosophically, I'm not sure it matters. I was thinking a lot about this over the last little while. I've actually recorded this episode over several days, over the span of like 2 weeks, while we've been recording in August, while we've been recording our regular episodes, because I know Clayton's going away in September. So I'm recording this in advance in hopes of letting it out, releasing it while Clayton's away, trying to get ahead of the work curve here. But I don't know when you're actually going to hear this, because I've got a couple other irons in the fire for shows while Clayton's away. So if I'm lucky and I've just got an abundance of content for when Clayton's away, I'm just going to save it, because we are planning a break for Christmas, a season break where we're going to take some time off just for the holidays. Everybody takes time off. And we'll come back at a specific date in the new year. But I was hoping to get a little bit ahead of the curve and have a little bit of additional content that hopefully we could have queued up to release over the break, just as a little bonus, a little something to tide people over if people were still interested in listening or having something to listen to over the Christmas break in between seasons. So maybe you're hearing this in September, maybe you're hearing this in December, whenever you're hearing it. Apologize for the squeaky chair. I'm in a different recording space. I'm in Iam's office. Well, she's downstairs, looking after the dog, and the chair is just so squeaky, so I'm sorry about that. But anyway, on with what I was saying. I was thinking a lot about this over the past 2 weeks as I've been working on like 3 different episodes at once, and it occurred to me that does it really matter? Does it really matter if taking DMT actually teleports you to a different dimension, or opens a window to a different dimension, or if it's just a different internal dimension? Is there really a difference? The experiences are real enough in any form of divination. So if it feels real, the experience is real in your memory, that makes it real. Do you know what I'm saying? Am I just rambling? Maybe I'm just rambling. I don't know. But I feel like that's true of all these different forms of divination, whether you're using astrology or tarot or drugs. Experiences, the impact, if you feel it feels real to you, then it's going to impact your life as if it were. So what's the difference? And I actually found just one last tab I had in the book here that I missed earlier. I don't know how I skipped it. I think it's kind of interesting. In a study published in 1976, endogenous DTM levels were measured in the urine of psychiatric patients. DMT was detected in the urine of 47% of those diagnosed by their psychiatrist as schizophrenic, and in 38% of those with other forms of psychosis. So that is something I didn't consider, that perhaps people that are mentally ill, perhaps at heightened levels of DMT, could be playing a role or be a factor in the psychosis. So maybe that's another point of caution for using the substance and inducing those effects artificially. What kind of damage might you be doing that you're unaware of? I don't know. Everything else we know about DMT use seems to say that it's totally safe, but how do you really know at the end of the day, right? Perhaps it could lead to problems down the road. And also perhaps a different way of looking at psychosis itself. Perhaps, and I mean, we induce altered states all the time without the use of psychoactive substances. We'll use drumming and music and sweat lodges and ritual to induce those states of mind. And perhaps those rituals have a way of heightening DMT within the body all on its own. Maybe there are practices, meditations, I don't know, that could help psychiatric patients reduce their overall levels of DMT in the body. I don't know. I guess that's what I'm getting down to. I feel like I'm spiraling here, folks. So I think I'm going to call it a day. It's been a lot of fun doing a solo episode, a little shorter. I still find this really hard talking to myself and doing it. And I've recorded this in chunks, like I said, over several days. So it's been great because it's given me time to think about it and research things in between and read different chunks of the book, chapters of the book throughout the week as I've gone through, which has been great. It's given me time to really think about the show as I build it. And I've recorded in kind of these little chunks at a time, and I'm splicing it all together. Hopefully it all sounds okay at the end of the day, but yeah, thanks for sticking with me. And one last thing, just before I go, I really wanted to give a kind of entertainment recommendation that has to deal with all of this, sort of. There's a show on Prime called Undone, and Bob Odenkirk is in it, and it's really good. It's about a young woman who's in a car accident, and she's got like brain damage and goes on this really kind of shamanic healing journey. It's really awesome. Go check it out. I really kind of rediscovered it over the past week or two researching the show, and it was a lot of fun. Great show. Absolutely awesome. So check that out. I'll link to that in the show notes as well. I think we'll call that. Yeah. Thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. And I guess we'll see you when we see you. Good night.